Hey guys, tonight we begin with a journey into a world that once thrived in the heart of what is now modern-day Mexico. A world of towering temples, bustling marketplaces, and vibrant rivers that crisscrossed a landscape shaped by mountains, lakes, and valleys. Tonight, we explore the Aztec Empire, its rise, its people, their beliefs, and the intricate tapestry of life that surrounded one of the most fascinating civilizations in history. Before we settle in and begin our peaceful journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if what I share here truly resonates with you. Your support helps me create more of these videos. And if you feel like it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see the many corners of the world where we connect. Now, dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together as we explore what lies ahead. Chapter 1. Setting the stage for the Aztec civilization. Long before the Aztecs built their great city of Tenochtitlan, the Valley of Mexico was a mosaic of natural beauty. Stretching across highlands surrounded by towering volcanic mountains, this valley was punctuated by shimmering lakes, marshes, and fertile lands that nurtured life for centuries. Among these waters and fertile plains, earlier civilizations such as the Toltecs and Teotihuacanos had left echoes of their greatness, whispers of ancient knowledge that the Aztecs would later inherit. Imagine the soft mist rising in the early morning over the lakes, the calm water reflecting the peaks of mountains that seemed to touch the sky. It was here, on small islands and shores, that the Aztecs first began to envision a city unlike any other. The lake itself was not merely a backdrop, it was life-giving. Its waters provided fish, allowed for the cultivation of floating gardens called chinampas, and offered a natural defense against invaders. The Aztec people, known as the Mexica, were originally a nomadic tribe. Their story begins in the north, in a place called Aztlan, a land said to be rich in legend and myth. Guided by visions and prophecies, the Mexica journeyed across mountains and plains for centuries, seeking a sign from their gods. That sign, according to their sacred texts, would appear as an eagle perched upon a cactus, devouring a serpent. And there, in the heart of Lake Texcoco, they found it. The island where this vision manifested became the foundation for Tenochtitlan, a city that would rise from the water itself, growing into a remarkable blend of ingenuity, spirituality, and resilience. Life in the valley was not easy. The land demanded careful attention, and the Aztecs learned to harmonize with their environment. They constructed intricate canals, terraced fields, and chinampas, floating gardens that seemed to hover above the water, gently feeding the city with crops of maize, beans, and squash. Their success was a quiet marvel, a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability, even in the heart of challenging landscapes. As we drift deeper into this world, imagine the soft sounds of the valley, the gentle lapping of water against reed-lined shores, the distant calls of birds in the morning light, and the faint murmur of small communities slowly taking root. Each sound is a thread in the fabric of the Aztec story, weaving together a civilization that would come to flourish in ways both grand and intricate. Chapter 2. The Mexica People, Journey, Settlement, and the Birth of Tenochtitlan. As the morning mist slowly lifts from the Valley of Mexico, we can almost sense the movement of the Mexica people, journeying across rugged lands with quiet determination. These were not yet the citizens of a great empire. They were wanderers, a resilient tribe carrying the weight of prophecy, seeking a home promised to them in visions and dreams. The Mexica migration was a journey that stretched over generations. From their mythical homeland of Aztlan, they traveled through highlands and deserts, over rivers and mountains, guided by the whispers of their gods and the promise of a future resting place. Each step of the journey was marked by both hardship and learning. The Mexica were skilled at adapting to new environments, learning to read the signs of nature, understanding the seasons, the flow of water, and the rhythm of the sun. Their society was tightly woven, based on a network of familial and communal relationships. Leaders and priests were chosen not only for their wisdom, but for their ability to interpret the will of the gods. The Mexica believed deeply in signs and omens. They carried sacred objects and totems that reminded them of their connection to the divine. And throughout their journey, they never lost sight of the prophecy that would eventually lead them to the heart of Lake Texcoco. Imagine a quiet evening during their migration. The sky is painted with soft hues of pink and gold as the sun dips behind distant mountains. Families gather around small fires, sharing meals of maize, beans, and squash, while elders recount stories of the ancestors and the gods who guide their path. Children listen, their eyes wide with wonder, as they learn the songs, rituals, and values that will shape the identity of a people who will one day create one of the most remarkable civilizations in Mesoamerica. After years of searching, the Mexica finally encountered Lake Texcoco. The lake itself was a vast, shimmering expanse, dotted with small islands and reed-covered shores. Here, the Mexica saw the vision that had guided them for generations: an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. This sacred sign marked the place where they were to build their city, and it became the spiritual and physical foundation of Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan was unlike any settlement the Mexica had known. Built on an island, it required ingenuity and patience. The early city was a harmonious blend of water and earth. The Mexica dug canals to connect parts of the island, allowing small canoes to travel silently through the city. They constructed causeways, long, narrow roads of stone and earth that linked the island to the surrounding shores. These causeways were not merely practical. They symbolized the connection between the sacred city and the world beyond the lake. The Mexica also innovated in agriculture. They developed the chinampa system, floating gardens carefully built from layers of mud, reeds, and vegetation. These gardens seemed almost magical, hovering above the water, producing rich harvests of maize, beans, squash, chili, and flowers. This method allowed the Mexica to support a growing population, turning the once small settlement into a thriving urban center. Life in early Tenochtitlan was deeply intertwined with spirituality. Every action was guided by a sense of sacred purpose. Temples were constructed to honor the gods, each adorned with intricate carvings, colorful murals, and offerings of flowers, food, and sometimes precious sacrifices. The Mexica believed that the gods maintained balance in the world, and that their devotion, discipline, and ritual practices were essential to the health and prosperity of their society. In addition to their spiritual pursuits, the Mexica were also skilled craftsmen, traders, and warriors. They created finely woven textiles, pottery, and jewelry using materials sourced from both the valley and distant regions. Trade routes were established, linking Tenochtitlan to neighboring peoples and distant lands, allowing for the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural practices. As we let our minds drift through the city, picture the streets of Tenochtitlan in the early years. Small dwellings of reed and wood cluster together, smoke curling gently from the hearths. Merchants call softly, selling fruits, vegetables, and crafted goods. Children run along the canals, their laughter blending with the quiet splash of canoes gliding across the water. Priests move with measured steps, carrying sacred items to the temples, their chants echoing softly against the stones of the city. Each sound, each movement contributes to a living, breathing world, a civilization awakening into greatness, nurtured by water, soil, and faith. The Mexica understood that survival depended on balance. They carefully managed the natural resources of the lake and valley, respecting the cycles of the seasons and the limits of their environment. This attentiveness to their surroundings allowed Tenochtitlan to flourish, growing steadily from a small island settlement into a powerful city rich in culture, tradition, and ingenuity. And so, the stage was set. A people guided by prophecy, sustained by water and land, and inspired by a vision of greatness, had planted the seeds of a civilization that would one day astonish the world. Tenochtitlan was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality. Chapter 3: Kings, Councils, and Communities: Understanding Aztec Society. As the gentle waters of Lake Texcoco shimmer in the soft morning light, Tenochtitlan begins to take shape, not only as a city of stone and canals, but as a society bound together by order, responsibility, and a shared understanding of the world. The Mexica, who had once wandered in search of a home, now begin to organize themselves into a civilization with a carefully balanced structure, one that would guide their daily lives, their spiritual devotion, and their interactions with neighboring peoples. At the heart of this structure was the Tlatoani, the ruler or king. The Tlatoani was more than a political leader. He was a spiritual figure, a guardian of both the city and the divine order. His position was not inherited automatically, but chosen from among the noble families, often guided by priests and councils of elders who observed qualities such as wisdom, courage, and piety. The king's decisions were considered sacred, as his authority was believed to come directly from the gods. Supporting the Tlatoani was a network of noble families, priests, and advisors who formed the backbone of governance. These individuals managed different aspects of city life, from the collection of tribute and taxes to the oversight of trade, agriculture, and construction. Priests in particular held an essential role, bridging the human and spiritual worlds. They interpreted omens, performed ceremonies, and advised leaders on matters both practical and divine. Their guidance was often sought in times of harvest, battle, or illness, and their presence imbued everyday life with a sense of connection to something larger than the city itself. The Aztec society was divided into distinct social classes, each contributing to the functioning of the empire in their own way. At the top were the nobles and priests, followed by skilled artisans, traders, and warriors, and finally the commoners, farmers, and laborers who sustained the city with their daily work. Each role was seen as part of a greater whole, and the Mexica believed that fulfilling one's duty was a form of devotion. Even children were taught the values of their society from a young age, learning not only practical skills, but also the moral and spiritual lessons that would guide them into adulthood. Warriors held a particularly respected position within Aztec society. The Mexica believed that the balance of the world depended on their ability to protect their city and expand its influence. Young men trained rigorously in martial arts, hunting, and strategy, preparing for the challenges of defending Tenochtitlan and engaging in campaigns to collect tribute from surrounding regions. Yet war was never seen purely as a pursuit of conquest. It was also an offering to the gods, a sacred act that reinforced the cosmic order. Meanwhile, the city itself was carefully organized into kalpuli, or neighborhoods. Each kalpuli was a self-contained community with shared responsibilities for land, temples, and schools. Families within a kalpuli worked together in agriculture, crafts, and trade, creating a sense of belonging and interdependence. Children attended schools where they learned the history, religious traditions, and practical skills of the Mexica people. Through these lessons, knowledge and culture were passed from one generation to the next, ensuring the survival and growth of the civilization. One of the most fascinating aspects of Aztec society was its complex system of tribute and economy. While trade routes connected Tenochtitlan to other cities and regions, the empire also relied on tribute from conquered peoples. This tribute was not only a source of wealth, but a means of reinforcing social and political ties. Items such as textiles, food, precious stones, and crafted goods flowed into the city, supporting artisans, priests, and the elite. This system created a delicate balance, a network of relationships built on respect, obligation, and the shared understanding of the Aztec worldview. Yet society was not solely defined by politics and economy. It was also shaped by ritual and spirituality. Life in Tenochtitlan was punctuated by ceremonies honoring the gods, festivals marking the cycles of the sun, and processions through the canals and streets. Temples rose from the city center, their staircases reaching toward the sky, offering a visual reminder of the connection between the people and the divine. The citizens moved through the city with a sense of purpose, understanding that their daily actions, from planting crops to trading goods, were part of a larger cosmic balance. Picture now a quiet evening in Tenochtitlan. The sun dips behind the mountains, casting a warm glow over the causeways and canals. Smoke curls softly from hearths, mixing with the scent of flowers and freshly cooked maize. Children laugh in the courtyards, while artisans gently hammer gold and copper into intricate jewelry. Priests chant in the temples, their voices rising and falling like a gentle tide, as nobles and rulers discuss the needs of the city. Each sound, each movement, is a thread in the intricate fabric of Aztec life, woven together by respect, devotion, and community. It is within this structure, both practical and spiritual, that Tenochtitlan flourished. The careful organization of society, the roles of individuals, and the integration of faith and daily life created a civilization that could sustain tens of thousands of people, not only surviving, but thriving in harmony with the challenges of their environment. As we drift through the streets of this ancient city, listening to the gentle lapping of water along the canals and imagining the soft murmur of voices in the marketplace, we can sense the heartbeat of a people who understood both their world and their place within it. Their achievements were not born of chaos, but of careful planning, devotion, and a deep understanding of the delicate balance between human effort and the forces of nature. Chapter 4: The Gods Among Us, Aztec Religion and Cosmology. As the sun rises gently over the Valley of Mexico, painting the mountains with soft strokes of gold and amber, we drift into the spiritual heart of Tenochtitlan. For the Mexica, life and faith were inseparable. Every step taken on the canals, every stroke of the paddle in a canoe, every seed planted in a chinampa was an act intertwined with devotion. The Aztecs lived in a world where gods shaped the sky, the earth, and the daily rhythm of life, and where humans existed as participants in an ongoing cosmic dance. At the center of this belief system was a rich pantheon of gods, each representing forces of nature, human endeavor, and the universe itself. One could not simply observe the world without seeing the divine presence. The sun, rising and setting with measured grace, was governed by Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun itself. He was the patron deity of the Mexica people, guiding their migration and protecting Tenochtitlan. Each morning, as light touched the city, offerings and prayers were made to honor his journey across the sky, ensuring that the sun would rise again and sustain life. Alongside Huitzilopochtli stood Tlaloc, the rain god, whose tears nourished the crops and filled the lakes. Without Tlaloc, the fields of maize, beans, and squash could not flourish, and the people knew the delicate balance of life depended on his favor. Ceremonies in his honor were held at the beginning of the rainy season, often atop high platforms or in sacred caves, where priests and citizens alike could witness the intertwining of heaven and earth. Equally important was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a god of wisdom, wind, and learning. Quetzalcoatl's presence reminded the Mexica that knowledge, art, and culture were divine gifts. Teachers, scribes, and artisans all paid homage to him, understanding that the pursuit of knowledge was both a human endeavor and a sacred duty. Temples called teocalli dominated the skyline of Tenochtitlan, their stepped pyramids reaching toward the heavens. Each temple was carefully oriented, aligned with the sun, moon, and stars, reflecting the Aztec understanding of the cosmos. Climbing these sacred stairways, one could feel a sense of connection between the earthly city below and the celestial realm above. From these heights, ceremonies unfolded with calm precision. Prayers, offerings, and rituals that reminded the people of their place in the vast web of existence. Central to Aztec cosmology was the concept of dual balance. The universe was seen as a delicate interplay between opposing forces: life and death, day and night, water and fire, creation and destruction. The Mexica believed that humans were active participants in maintaining this balance, and that through ritual, work, and devotion, they could ensure the continuity of the world. Life was not accidental. It was a sacred duty, a series of choices that resonated across time and space. Daily life reflected these beliefs. From the moment children awoke, their routines were guided by ritual. Meals were often offered to the gods, small prayers whispered as corn was ground into dough or beans were cooked over a fire. Even the act of weaving a cloth, sculpting a figurine, or trading in the marketplace was performed with an awareness that these actions existed within a larger cosmic order. The Aztecs also celebrated festivals that marked cycles of time and honored the gods. One of the most important was the festival of Tlacaxipehualistli, a celebration dedicated to the god of war and agriculture. It was a time of music, dance, and ceremonial offerings, reminding the people that the energy of life was intertwined with both sacrifice and renewal. Another festival, Xochitl, celebrated flowers, fertility, and the creative spirit, filling the city with vibrant colors, gentle scents, and the hum of communal joy. Even death was woven into this spiritual tapestry. The Mexica believed in multiple realms, each connected to different gods and elements of the natural world. Souls traveled along paths guided by the divine, and funerary rites were performed to ease this journey. Burial offerings, symbolic items, and prayers ensured that loved ones continued to participate in the cosmic cycle. Their presence felt in subtle, invisible ways within the community. Imagine now the quiet of night in Tenochtitlan. The sky darkens over the lake, the mountains casting gentle shadows across the water. Stars glimmer like scattered jewels, each one reflecting the eternal presence of the gods. From the temples, faint chants rise into the evening air, mixing with the soft lapping of water along the canals. Families sleep under the watchful gaze of the heavens, trusting that the balance of life, maintained through devotion and ritual, will continue. In this world, every action had meaning, and every meaning was connected to a larger, sacred pattern. The Aztecs understood that humanity was not separate from the divine. It was an integral part of a living, breathing universe. Their religion, their temples, and their ceremonies were not only expressions of faith, but a framework that shaped every aspect of their civilization, allowing Tenochtitlan to thrive in harmony with the forces of nature and time. Chapter 5. Life in Tenochtitlan, the rhythm of an Aztec city. As the soft light of dawn brushes across the waters of Lake Texcoco, the city of Tenochtitlan begins to stir. Life flows with a gentle rhythm, a balance between labor, devotion, and the quiet enjoyment of daily existence. The city itself is a masterpiece of human ingenuity, a network of canals, causeways, temples, and neighborhoods that hums with activity, yet remains in harmony with the natural world surrounding it. Imagine walking along one of the stone-paved causeways connecting the island city to the mainland. Canals lined with reeds and flowering plants reflect the sky above, while small canoes glide silently through the water, carrying people and goods to markets and temples. The soft sound of paddles dipping into the water mixes with the distant calls of merchants announcing their wares, creating a gentle soundtrack for the city's early morning. The marketplaces of Tenochtitlan were vibrant centers of trade, though they carried a calm energy rather than chaos. Merchants laid out carefully arranged displays of brightly colored textiles, freshly harvested maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers. Artisans showcased finely crafted pottery, jewelry, and figurines. Fragrant herbs and flowers filled the air with a soothing aroma, and the soft murmur of conversation drifted like a gentle breeze. Here, both commoners and nobles interacted, exchanging goods, news, and stories that connected the community. Homes were modest, yet functional, built from reeds, adobe, and wood, with thatched roofs that offered shelter and comfort. Inside, families shared spaces for cooking, weaving, and teaching children the skills they would need in adulthood. Meals were simple but nourishing. Maize tortillas, beans, squash, amaranth, and occasionally fish or turkey. Food was prepared with care, often with small offerings made to the gods before the first bite, a subtle reminder of the spiritual thread woven into daily life. Education was highly valued. Children attended schools known as Kalmakak or Telpochkali, depending on their social class. Here, they learned reading, writing, history, religion, and practical skills. Young warriors trained in martial arts and strategy, while girls were instructed in weaving, household management, and ritual practices. Every lesson, every skill, was connected to the broader understanding that life was a sacred dance between human effort and divine order. The Aztecs were also deeply connected to nature and agriculture. The chinampas, floating gardens built upon the lake, provided a steady supply of food while reflecting an elegant solution to the challenges of island living. Farmers tended their plots with patience, planting crops in carefully calculated cycles to maximize fertility and yield. The rhythm of planting and harvesting was intertwined with ceremonies to Tlaloc and other agricultural deities, ensuring that the land remained generous, and the people were sustained. Art and culture flourished as quietly as the canals. Music drifted through the city, created with drums, flutes, and the rhythmic beating of wooden instruments. Dancers moved gracefully in public squares and temples, performing for ceremonies or seasonal festivals. Painters and scribes documented myths, history, and daily life on codices, their intricate drawings preserving the collective memory of the Mexica. Every creative act was a meditation, a reflection of beauty, devotion, and skill. Social interaction was guided by respect, ritual, and communal awareness. Public spaces served as gathering points where elders shared stories of the past, advice for the present, and wisdom for the future. Storytelling was an essential art form, blending history, mythology, and moral lessons, ensuring that every citizen understood their place within the world. Even leisure had its structure. Games, gentle competitions, and communal festivities allowed people to celebrate life without disrupting the harmony of society. Consider now the softer moments of the day. Children chasing one another along the canals, laughter echoing softly across the water, artisans polishing their work in quiet courtyards, families preparing simple meals together, the aroma of roasted maize mingling with morning mist, priests walking calmly toward temples, carrying incense and offerings to honor the gods, their footsteps measured and serene. In all of these moments, one can feel the pulse of a civilization that balanced work, faith, and community in a gentle, sustaining rhythm. Even the city's infrastructure contributed to this balance. Aqueducts brought fresh water from distant springs, while canals carried away waste with a quiet efficiency. Streets were carefully planned to allow the flow of people and goods without congestion. Temples and marketplaces were arranged to provide both function and spiritual resonance, ensuring that the city was not only livable, but inspiring to those who moved through it. Tenochtitlan's beauty was not only in its physical form, but in the harmonious integration of life itself. Every action, from planting a seed to offering a prayer, from trading in the market to sculpting a figurine, contributed to the ongoing balance of the city. The Mexica understood that civilization was not merely a collection of structures or systems. It was a living organism, sustained by respect, devotion, and the quiet diligence of its people. As night falls, the city transforms into a calm sanctuary. Lanterns cast a soft glow over the canals, reflecting the twinkling stars above. The gentle lapping of water, the distant echo of ceremonial drums, and the soft murmur of voices in homes create a peaceful symphony. Tenochtitlan rests under the protective gaze of the gods, a city alive with quiet purpose, waiting for the next day to continue its rhythm of devotion, labor, and life. Chapter 6: Warriors of the Sun. Aztec military culture and expansion. As the sun rises over the jagged peaks surrounding Lake Texcoco, we imagine the quiet determination of the Aztec warriors preparing for their daily drills, a subtle but essential part of life in Tenochtitlan. For the Mexica, war was not a matter of random violence. It was a sacred responsibility, a means of maintaining balance in the cosmos, defending their city, and securing the resources necessary to sustain life and devotion. Military training began at a young age. Boys, often as young as 10 or 12, were enrolled in the Telpochcali, schools specifically for commoners, where they learned the arts of combat. Here, they practiced with wooden swords called macuahuitl, shields, and spears, moving with grace and precision through choreographed drills. Discipline was central to their training, but so was the understanding of strategy, honor, and the spiritual purpose of war. Every swing of the sword, every step taken in formation, was an act of devotion to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun. The warriors of Tenochtitlan were organized into ranks, distinguished by their skill, bravery, and accomplishments. The eagle and jaguar warriors were among the most revered. Eagle warriors were fierce and agile, wearing feathers and armor that symbolized the power of the sky. Jaguar warriors, adorned in black jaguar pelts, embodied the strength and ferocity of the jungle. Rising through the ranks required courage in battle, cleverness in strategy, and the ability to capture enemies for ceremonial purposes, a practice deeply tied to the spiritual beliefs of the Aztec people. Unlike the wars we might imagine today, Aztec battles were highly ritualized. Conquests were often aimed at collecting tribute, capturing prisoners for ritual offerings, and asserting dominance rather than annihilating entire populations. Armies moved with discipline and coordination, using banners, drums, and conch shell trumpets to communicate across the battlefield. Warriors were trained to anticipate the movements of opponents, employing strategies that reflected both intelligence and respect for the art of combat. Expansion of the Aztec Empire relied not only on military might, but on a combination of diplomacy, strategic alliances, and economic integration. The Triple Alliance, formed between Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, exemplified this approach. Through carefully negotiated agreements, the Aztecs expanded their influence across the Valley of Mexico, bringing neighboring city-states into a network of tribute and mutual support. Conquered regions provided goods, labor, and resources, sustaining the growing empire while maintaining a structured relationship that ensured relative stability. The psychological and spiritual preparation for war was as important as physical training. Warriors participated in ceremonies before departing for battle, offering prayers and sacrifices to Huitzilopochtli to seek favor and protection. Armor and weapons were consecrated, and warriors often fasted or engaged in purification rituals. This deep spiritual integration made the act of warfare a continuation of the Mexica's cosmic duties, each campaign a contribution to the balance of the universe. Yet war was not only about conquest, it was also a means of education and personal growth. Young warriors learned humility, discipline, and the values of courage and loyalty. They understood that battle was not a pursuit of glory alone, but a responsibility to their families, their city, and the gods. Through these experiences, individuals became part of the greater rhythm of Aztec society, contributing to its security, prosperity, and spiritual harmony. The urban life of Tenochtitlan itself reflected the presence of this military culture. Statues, murals, and carvings commemorated victories and heroic deeds, reminding citizens that the protection of the city depended on vigilance and preparedness. Training fields and practice grounds were carefully maintained, blending seamlessly into the surrounding neighborhoods, temples, and marketplaces. Even during peaceful times, the rhythm of the city echoed with the discipline of warriors whose silent strength safeguarded the civilization. Consider the gentle imagery of a training field at dusk. The sun sets behind distant mountains, casting a warm glow over the lake. Young warriors move in precise formations, wooden swords tapping rhythmically against shields. The soft murmur of chants and prayers floats in the evening air, mingling with the quiet sounds of the city settling down for the night. Parents observe with pride, children watch in admiration, and the rhythm of life continues, intertwined with devotion, discipline, and respect for the cosmos. The Aztec military system, though often associated with conquest and sacrifice, was fundamentally about balance, balancing strength with spirituality, order with strategy, and duty with honor. It allowed the Mexica to expand their empire while maintaining the harmony of their society, and it ensured that Tenochtitlan remained not just a city of stone and canals, but a civilization guided by purpose, devotion, and the quiet vigilance of its people. Chapter 7. The Pulse of Commerce, Aztec Trade and Market Life. As the morning sun glistens on the tranquil waters of Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlan awakens not only with the rhythm of daily life, but also with the quiet hum of commerce. Trade was the lifeblood of the Aztec Empire, a system that extended far beyond the city's canals and marketplaces, connecting distant regions through a network of goods, ideas, and cultural exchange. The central marketplace of Tenochtitlan, called Tlatelolco, was one of the largest in all of Mesoamerica. From a distance, it appeared like a gentle sea of activity, alive with the soft colors of textiles, the muted clatter of pottery, and the subtle scents of herbs, flowers, and freshly prepared foods. Stalls were carefully arranged according to the type of goods sold, creating an organized and harmonious environment. Fish, maize, beans, chili peppers, squash, cacao, and exotic fruits from distant lands were displayed in neat piles, each item reflecting the abundance of the valley and the skill of the people who cultivated it. Trade was more than just a practical exchange. It was an extension of the Mexica worldview. Merchants, known as Pochteka, were respected for their knowledge of distant lands, languages, and customs. These long-distance traders acted as diplomats, spies, and cultural ambassadors, quietly observing and reporting on political developments in neighboring regions. Their journeys could span weeks or months, carrying not only goods but also ideas, news, and the spiritual energy of the Aztec people. Imagine a Pochteka preparing for a journey at dawn. He carefully wraps cacao, precious feathers, and finely woven textiles, setting out along stone-paved roads that stretch into the mountains and deserts. He travels with calm diligence, aware that his success and safety are intertwined with the prosperity of the empire and the favor of the gods. Along the way, he encounters other traders, local communities, and landscapes that vary from lush valleys to arid plains, each presenting subtle challenges and opportunities for exchange. Within the city, marketplaces were spaces of community, learning, and subtle diplomacy. Citizens and visitors moved among the stalls with quiet purpose, exchanging goods, sharing news, and observing the rhythm of social interaction. The marketplace was not noisy chaos. It was a carefully balanced ecosystem where negotiation and respect guided every interaction. Prices were standardized, weights and measures were precise, and merchants often displayed their wares with aesthetic care, turning each stall into a small tableau of abundance and craftsmanship. Economic life in Tenochtitlan was supported by a combination of local production, tribute, and trade. Farmers worked tirelessly on the chinampas, producing food that fed both the city's population and travelers passing through. Artisans shaped stone, clay, wood, and metal into practical and decorative objects. Nobles oversaw production and distribution, ensuring that resources were managed efficiently and fairly. Every item moved through a careful system that reflected the Aztec commitment to balance, harmony, and sustainability. Even the flow of money and tribute was part of this delicate equilibrium. Cocoa beans, cloth, gold dust, and other commodities served as a medium of exchange, allowing goods to circulate while maintaining the city's prosperity. Tribute from conquered regions provided raw materials, labor, and additional goods, reinforcing political relationships while sustaining economic stability. It was a system that required foresight, organization, and a deep understanding of human and environmental resources. Consider now the quiet moments between bustling commerce. A young girl watches her mother carefully arrange fresh maize on a reed mat. An artisan polishes a copper ornament, the faint gleam reflecting the morning light. Traders exchange greetings and nods, acknowledging each other's presence with calm respect. In these subtle moments, the heartbeat of the city becomes clear, a rhythm of labor, devotion, and quiet social cohesion that sustains the life of the empire. Festivals and special events added color and ritual to market life. During celebrations, the marketplace transformed into a vibrant stage of song, dance, and ceremony. Goods were not only traded, but offered to the gods, blending commerce with devotion. Citizens moved through this space with awareness and care, understanding that prosperity was inseparable from spiritual balance. The marketplace, in essence, reflected the larger Aztec worldview. It was not merely a place to exchange goods. It was a space where social order, spiritual devotion, and economic necessity converged. Walking through the canals and stalls, observing merchants and buyers, one could sense the quiet intelligence that guided the city's growth. Tenochtitlan was sustained by these rhythms of trade, commerce, and connection, and it was through this careful orchestration that the Aztec Empire thrived. As evening descends, the sounds of the marketplace soften. Merchants pack away their goods, families return to their homes, and the gentle light of lanterns casts a warm glow across the stone causeways. The city exhales, a moment of calm after a day of productivity, reflection, and exchange. The quiet pulse of commerce has carried life through another day, weaving together the threads of culture, economy, and devotion that make Tenochtitlan a living, breathing masterpiece. Chapter 8: Stones and Symbols. The art and architecture of Tenochtitlan. As the first rays of dawn stretch across Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlan reveals itself not only as a city of canals and marketplaces, but as a living gallery of art, symbolism, and architecture. The Mexica people, guided by devotion and practicality, transformed the island into a space where beauty, function, and spirituality intertwined, each stone, each structure, and each carving telling a story of a civilization in harmony with the cosmos. At the center of the city rose the Great Temple, or Templo Mayor, a majestic double pyramid dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, and Tlaloc, the rain deity. Its stepped terraces climbed toward the sky, layered like the cosmos itself, each level representing the connection between earth and heaven. The temple was a place of ceremonies, offerings, and reflection, where priests and nobles moved with measured steps, chanting prayers that rose in gentle waves into the morning air. Imagine approaching the Templo Mayor. The scent of copal incense fills the air, blending with the soft fragrance of blooming flowers arranged for ritual offerings. Stone carvings of jaguars, eagles, serpents, and sacred symbols decorate the temple walls, each one representing a story, a value, or a divine force. Colors, though muted by the passing centuries, once shone vividly. Deep reds, turquoise blues, and golden yellows, painting the narratives of gods, creation, and the Mexica people's journey. Beyond the temples, palaces, and noble residences demonstrated the elegance of Aztec architecture. Constructed from stone and wood, adorned with carved reliefs and colorful murals, these structures were designed for both beauty and function. Courtyards allowed light and air to flow through the spaces, while water channels reflected the sky, integrating natural elements into the built environment. Walls were often adorned with depictions of historical events, battles, and rituals, serving as visual stories that reinforced cultural memory and identity. The beauty of Tenochtitlan extended to its canals, causeways, and bridges. Water flowed gently through the city, a lifeline and a canvas for reflection. Canals were lined with reeds and carefully shaped embankments, while bridges connected neighborhoods in graceful arcs. The combination of water, stone, and greenery created an environment that was both functional and serene, allowing movement, trade, and reflection to coexist in harmony. Artisans in Tenochtitlan created works that were deeply symbolic. Sculptures and figurines carved from stone, wood, and clay depicted gods, animals, and mythological scenes. Each piece carried meaning, serving as an object of devotion or as a teaching tool for the community. Jewelry crafted from gold, jade, turquoise, and feathers reflected both aesthetic refinement and spiritual significance, worn by nobles and priests to honor the gods and display their roles within society. Murals adorned the walls of temples, palaces, and homes, illustrating stories of creation, heroism, and divine intervention. Brightly painted scenes captured the movements of gods, the cycles of the sun and moon, and the deeds of legendary leaders. Through these visual narratives, citizens, young and old, learned about their history, values, and the intricate relationships between humans and the divine. Even the everyday objects of life were touched by artistry. Ceramics used for cooking and storage were often adorned with geometric patterns, symbols of fertility, water, and life. Textiles, woven from cotton and dyed with natural pigments, displayed intricate patterns that reflected both the beauty of nature and the complexity of Mexica thought. Every creation, whether grand or humble, carried an awareness of harmony, function, and sacred order. The layout of Tenochtitlan itself was a testament to thoughtful design. Streets and plazas were arranged to facilitate movement, trade, and ritual procession. Neighborhoods clustered around central temples and marketplaces, creating a rhythm of life that integrated human activity with spiritual observance. The city's structure mirrored the Aztec cosmology, with causeways and canals forming symbolic axes connecting earth, water, and sky, reinforcing the sacred nature of daily existence. Picture now the city at dusk. The sun's warm glow reflects off the stone pyramids, casting gentle shadows across the canals. Soft lantern light illuminates the courtyards and streets, while the distant chanting of priests blends with the quiet hum of families returning home. Flowers, textiles, and painted murals catch the fading light, creating a tapestry of color and form that feels alive and sacred. The city breathes in rhythm with the lake, the mountains, and the sky, a living monument to the skill, devotion, and vision of the Aztec people. The art and architecture of Tenochtitlan were more than aesthetic expressions. They were physical manifestations of the Aztec understanding of the world. Each structure, each carving, and each decoration reflected a balance between practicality and spirituality, function and beauty, human endeavor, and divine inspiration. The city itself was a sacred work of art, a testament to a people who understood that civilization is measured not only in wealth and power, but in the harmony, creativity, and devotion expressed in every stone and stroke of color. Chapter 9: Seeds of Knowledge, Education and Wisdom in the Aztec Empire. As the gentle morning mist rises from the waters of Lake Texcoco, Tenochtitlan awakens not only with the rhythms of daily labor and devotion, but with the quiet pursuit of knowledge. In the Aztec Empire, education was not merely a preparation for adulthood. It was a lifelong journey, a sacred task intertwined with morality, spirituality, and civic responsibility. The Mexica understood that the survival and prosperity of their society depended on passing wisdom from one generation to the next. Education began in early childhood, within the home and the kalpuli, the neighborhood community that served as both a familial and civic unit. Parents nurtured their children, teaching them practical skills such as farming, weaving, cooking, and basic trade. Yet they also imparted stories, songs, and moral lessons, creating a foundation that blended the tangible with the spiritual. From the earliest moments of life, children were gently guided to understand their responsibilities to family, community, and the gods. Formal education was structured and highly organized. Boys and girls attended different schools, reflecting both societal roles and the importance of specialized training. The Telposhkali, or House of Youth, was primarily for commoner boys. Here, they trained in military skills, physical endurance, and the art of civic duty. They learned to wield weapons, navigate the terrain, and defend their city with discipline and courage. Yet even these lessons were infused with spiritual awareness. Every action, every movement, was connected to the guidance of Huitzilopochtli, the patron god of the Mexica people. For children of noble families, education took place in the Calmacac, a school dedicated to cultivating priests, scribes, and future leaders. In these sacred halls, young minds studied history, astronomy, religion, ethics, and philosophy. They memorized genealogies of gods and kings, learned the intricate patterns of calendars, and practiced the complex pictorial writing system used to record knowledge. Teachers were revered as guides between the human and divine realms, gently shaping their students into custodians of culture, ritual, and civic responsibility. The Aztecs valued not only practical knowledge, but also the subtle arts of observation, reflection, and storytelling. Children were encouraged to contemplate nature, to notice the cycles of the sun, the patterns of the seasons, and the behaviors of animals. They were taught that wisdom was not only found in books or scrolls, but also in the world itself, in the flow of water, the growth of maize, and the movement of celestial bodies. Central to Aztec education was the transmission of cultural memory. The Mexica were acutely aware that their civilization was part of a continuum stretching back to the origins of the universe and forward into generations yet unborn. Knowledge of mythology, ritual, and history was preserved through oral tradition, song, and poetry. Storytellers, known as Tlamatanaim, were highly respected, weaving tales of gods, heroes, and the founding of cities in a way that was both memorable and morally instructive. Children listened attentively, absorbing lessons of courage, humility, and devotion that would guide their lives. Astronomy and mathematics played a profound role in education. Observing the sky, Aztec scholars tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, using this knowledge to regulate calendars, agricultural cycles, and ceremonial dates. Complex calculations determined the timing of festivals, sacrifices, and planting seasons, ensuring that human activity remained aligned with cosmic rhythms. These lessons were taught patiently, with careful explanations that allowed young minds to visualize patterns, cycles, and interconnections, fostering both intellectual growth and spiritual awareness. Art, music, and literature were also integral to learning. Children practiced weaving, pottery, sculpture, and painting, creating works that reflected both skill and devotion. Music, with its gentle rhythms and melodic chants, taught timing, coordination, and emotional expression. Pictorial writing and codices preserved knowledge across generations, blending imagery with symbolism to encode historical, spiritual, and practical information. Through these methods, education became a holistic experience, nurturing the mind, body, and spirit. Imagine a quiet afternoon in a Kalmakak. Sunlight filters through reed walls, illuminating rows of young students seated on woven mats. A teacher gently guides a boy's hand as he traces symbols on a clay tablet, explaining their meaning and significance. Nearby, girls practice weaving intricate patterns, the rhythmic clatter of loom against thread forming a soft, meditative background. Outside, the soft murmur of a market drifts through open windows, reminding the students that knowledge is deeply connected to the world around them. Aztec education was not limited to childhood. Adults continued to learn through apprenticeship, observation, and participation in civic and religious life. Warriors refined strategy, artisans honed techniques, and priests deepened their understanding of ritual and cosmology. Learning was a lifelong process, a gentle unfolding that connected individuals to their families, communities, and the sacred patterns of the universe. The careful cultivation of knowledge allowed the Aztec Empire to flourish. Citizens were prepared not only to survive, but to thrive, to sustain the rhythms of city life, to honor the gods, and to contribute to a society built on balance, devotion, and respect. Education, in its many forms, was both practical and spiritual, a quiet, persistent force shaping the heart and mind of a civilization. As night falls over Tenochtitlan, the soft glow of lanterns illuminates courtyards and classrooms. Students rest from their studies, reflecting on lessons learned, while teachers review the sacred texts and codices, ensuring that the flow of knowledge continues uninterrupted. The city itself, alive with the gentle murmur of learning, seems to breathe with calm intelligence, a testament to the enduring power of wisdom, patience, and cultural continuity. Chapter 10. Healing Hands. Medicine and Wellness in the Aztec World. As the early morning mist drifts gently across the waters of Lake Texcoco, we turn our attention to the quiet, profound world of Aztec medicine. In Tenochtitlan, health was seen not only as a physical state, but as an expression of harmony between body and spirit, humanity and nature, and the people and the gods. Healing was a sacred art, a blend of observation, tradition, ritual, and the natural gifts of the land. Aztec physicians, known as Tizitl, were highly respected members of society. They combined practical knowledge of herbs, massage, and surgery with spiritual insight, understanding that illness could originate in both the body and the soul. Becoming a Tenochtitlan required rigorous training in schools called Kalmakak, where students learned to identify hundreds of plants, study human anatomy, and observe patterns of disease. They also learned the rituals, chants, and prayers that accompanied treatment, connecting their work to divine protection and cosmic balance. Plants were central to Aztec healing practices. The Mexica carefully cataloged herbs, roots, and flowers, recognizing subtle differences in color, texture, and fragrance that indicated their properties. cacao, marigold, sage, and copal were used in combinations to treat a range of ailments, from digestive problems to fevers, while aloe and other succulent plants were applied for wounds and burns. The preparation of remedies was deliberate and meditative, often accompanied by chants or offerings to ensure the god's blessing. Surgery was practiced with remarkable skill and precision. Tissitl were trained to perform procedures such as setting broken bones, draining abscesses, and removing superficial growths. Tools were made from obsidian, wood, and bone, crafted with careful attention to sharpness and balance. Even in these delicate operations, ritual played a role. The physician's hands were guided by prayer, ensuring that the act of healing was not only physical, but spiritual, reinforcing the connection between the body and the divine. The Aztecs understood that health extended beyond the individual to include the environment and community. Clean water, proper nutrition, and physical activity were essential to maintaining balance. The Chinampas provided fresh vegetables and grains, while fish and domesticated turkeys offered protein. Daily routines included work, ritual, and exercise, fostering physical strength and emotional stability. Disease was often seen as a disruption of balance, whether caused by spiritual forces, environmental factors, or behavioral habits. Mental and spiritual well-being were equally important. Illness could be interpreted as a sign of divine displeasure or an imbalance of energies. Ritual cleansing, fasting, and offerings were performed to restore harmony, and ceremonies could involve chanting, incense, and symbolic gestures. Music and poetry were considered therapeutic, providing emotional relief and aligning the mind with the rhythms of the cosmos. Consider a healer in a small courtyard at dawn. Soft sunlight filters through the reed walls, illuminating bundles of dried herbs hung from wooden beams. A patient sits quietly, observing as the Tissitl carefully prepares a poultice, grinding leaves into a fine, fragrant paste. Gentle chants rise into the morning air, blending with the soft rustling of trees and the distant hum of the city awakening. Each movement is deliberate, calm, and precise, embodying centuries of observation, wisdom, and reverence for life. Midwives, known as Tenochtitlan, played a vital role in community health, guiding childbirth with skill, care, and spiritual awareness. They used herbs, massages, and ritual techniques to ensure safe deliveries, while also educating mothers about infant care and nutrition. The arrival of a child was celebrated with offerings and prayers, a reminder that life and health were inseparable from the sacred cycles of nature and the divine. The Aztec approach to medicine also reflected an understanding of preventive care. Diet, hygiene, and lifestyle were emphasized, and citizens were taught to maintain balance through moderation, spiritual devotion, and respect for natural laws. Even daily routines, such as washing in canals, consuming fresh water, and walking along carefully maintained causeways, contributed to overall well-being. Imagine the city at sunset, with gentle shadows stretching across temples and canals. A Tenochtitlan walks slowly along a quiet street, observing the people, offering advice, and preparing remedies for those who seek guidance. Families gather in their homes, sharing meals infused with herbs, recounting stories, and performing small rituals to honor the gods. The soft hum of life carries a sense of continuity, a quiet confidence that health is nurtured not only by skill, but by mindfulness, devotion, and connection to the natural and spiritual worlds. The legacy of Aztec medicine reminds us that wellness is multidimensional, encompassing body, mind, and spirit. It was a system built on observation, compassion, and reverence, where every herb, chant, and ritual contributed to the intricate balance of life. In this gentle interplay of science and spirituality, the Mexica cultivated a profound understanding of health, leaving a subtle but enduring mark on the history of human knowledge. Chapter 11: Celestial Rhythms, Astronomy and the Science of Time in the Aztec Empire. As the gentle light of dawn spreads across the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, the Aztecs lift their gaze toward the sky, where the sun, moon, planets, and stars trace their timeless paths. To the Mexica, the heavens were not distant and indifferent. They were alive, deliberate, and intimately connected to life on Earth. Astronomy was both a science and a sacred art, guiding everything from agriculture and ritual to the cycles of the empire itself. Aztec astronomers, often priests trained in the Calmecac, observed the movements of celestial bodies with extraordinary patience and precision. Each dawn, as the sun rose above the mountains, they recorded its trajectory, the changing position of stars, and the shifting phases of the moon. These observations were meticulously catalogued, forming the foundation for complex calendars that structured both daily life and spiritual practice. At the heart of this system were two complementary calendars: the Tonalpohualli, a 260-day ritual calendar, and the Xiuhpohualli, a 365-day solar calendar. The Tonalpohualli was divided into 20 tricinas, each consisting of 13 days, and each day associated with specific deities, symbols, and omens. It served as a guide for ceremonies, divination, and spiritual observances, ensuring that human activity remained aligned with cosmic forces. The Xiuhpohualli, by contrast, reflected the solar year and was essential for agricultural planning, festivals, and civic events. Together, these calendars created a sophisticated system that harmonized the cycles of the heavens with the rhythm of daily life. Imagine an Aztec priest standing atop the Templo Mayor as the sun begins its ascent. With a steady hand, he marks the sun's shadow on a carved stone indicator, noting its angle, speed, and alignment with sacred markers. Nearby, other priests observe the rising moon and Venus, calculating future positions and recording patterns. This was not hurried work. It was a quiet meditation, a careful dialogue with the universe that required patience, attention, and reverence. Celestial knowledge influenced almost every aspect of Aztec life. Planting and harvesting were timed according to the sun's position, ensuring that crops were sown in harmony with seasonal cycles. Festivals, rituals, and sacrifices were scheduled to correspond with specific celestial events, creating a rhythm of devotion and celebration that reinforced both social cohesion and spiritual alignment. Even the construction of temples, pyramids, and causeways often reflected astronomical knowledge, with structures oriented to capture the sunrise, solstices, or the rising of key stars. The Aztecs also recognized patterns beyond the sun and moon. They tracked Venus, known as Tlahuizcalpantecutli, the Lord of the Dawn, whose appearances heralded specific events, from warfare to ceremonial observances. The movement of planets and eclipses were carefully noted, interpreted as omens or guides for human action. Knowledge of these celestial rhythms allowed the Mexica to anticipate natural phenomena, plan agricultural cycles, and structure their spiritual calendar with remarkable accuracy. Consider the gentle rhythm of a festival tied to the solar calendar. Citizens move quietly through the streets, carrying offerings and observing rituals that honor the sun's journey. Children watch the priest's calculations with curiosity, while elders recount stories of creation and cosmic order. Music, drums, and soft chants fill the plazas, blending with the light of dawn or dusk, creating a subtle symphony that mirrors the movement of the heavens themselves. Astronomy also fostered intellectual reflection. Observers contemplated the scale of the universe, the cycles of birth and death, and the delicate balance that sustained life on Earth. By connecting human activity to celestial patterns, the Mexica cultivated a sense of responsibility and humility, understanding that prosperity, health, and spiritual harmony were all intertwined with the rhythm of the cosmos. In their architectural design, the Aztecs embedded celestial alignment into monumental structures. The Templo Mayor itself was oriented to capture the equinox sunrise, while other pyramids and temples across the city aligned with solstices and lunar phases. Stone carvings, murals, and codices depicted constellations, planetary paths, and symbolic representations of cosmic events, creating a visual language that linked human life with the celestial sphere. Even in the quiet moments, the presence of the cosmos could be felt. As night falls over Tenochtitlan, the stars emerge one by one, reflected in the still waters of canals. Families pause to admire the sky, while priests observe from temple terraces, tracing familiar patterns and murmuring prayers of gratitude. The soft ripple of water, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the distant hum of the city create a serene backdrop for contemplation. In these moments, the Aztec understanding of time reveals itself not only as calculation, but as meditation, a deep, quiet awareness of the cycles that shape life, growth, and existence. Through their study of astronomy, the Mexica demonstrated a sophisticated grasp of the natural and spiritual worlds. They intertwined observation, mathematics, and ritual into a single system that guided agriculture, governance, ceremony, and daily life. Knowledge of the heavens was a living, breathing part of the city, shaping the rhythm of life in Tenochtitlan and linking the people to forces both visible and invisible. Chapter 12: The Breath of the Gods, Religion and Spiritual Life in the Aztec Empire. As the soft morning light glimmers across the canals of Tenochtitlan, we step into a world where every aspect of life is intertwined with the sacred. For the Mexica, the Aztec people, religion was not a separate part of existence. It was life itself. From the rhythm of daily labor to the flow of water in their canals, from the patterns of the stars to the movement of maize in the fields, the presence of the gods was felt everywhere, guiding, protecting, and sustaining the city. The Aztec pantheon was vast and intricate, with deities representing forces of nature, human endeavor, and cosmic balance. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of the sun and war, symbolized courage, vigilance, and the eternal struggle against darkness. Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility, governed the cycles of life and nourishment, ensuring that the crops thrived and the lakes remained abundant. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, embodied wisdom, wind, and the sacred knowledge of humanity. Each god held a place in the Mexica mind and heart, shaping not only ceremonies, but the rhythm of existence itself. Daily life was infused with spiritual observances. Families offered small gifts of food, flowers, or incense at home altars, whispering prayers of gratitude and hope. In neighborhoods, the Calpulli maintained communal shrines where citizens gathered to honor the deities, celebrate seasonal festivals, or seek guidance during moments of uncertainty. Children learned from the earliest age that every action carried spiritual weight, that care, courage, and respect were offerings to the unseen forces that sustained their world. Ceremonies in Tenochtitlan were both elaborate and deeply symbolic. The Templo Mayor, at the heart of the city, was the focal point for major rituals. Priests, adorned in intricate feathered headdresses and garments of gold and turquoise, performed sacrifices, dances, and chants that echoed with cosmic significance. While sacrifice is often remembered as a dramatic act, it was understood by the Mexica as a sacred reciprocity, a gift to sustain the gods, maintain balance, and ensure the continued harmony of the universe. These rituals were precise, carefully timed, and deeply meditative, reflecting a profound awareness of human responsibility in the cosmic order. Symbolism was woven into every object, structure, and action. Murals depicted gods with feathers, serpents, and celestial motifs. Jewelry bore signs of fertility, protection, and devotion. And even the layout of Tenochtitlan echoed spiritual principles, aligning temples and plazas with the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. Every canal, every pyramid, and every marketplace carried echoes of divine order, reminding citizens that they were part of a universe in constant, delicate balance. The Aztecs also honored the cycles of life through festivals, marking key moments in agriculture, astronomy, and civic life. During Xuchmalpilli, the binding of the years, the entire city participated in ceremonies that reaffirmed cosmic order and human responsibility. In quieter moments, smaller festivals allowed families to give thanks for harvests, for rain, or for the health of loved ones. Music, dance, and poetry accompanied these observances, creating a subtle harmony that flowed through both body and spirit. Spiritual understanding extended to personal conduct. Aztec philosophy emphasized balance, humility, and awareness. Citizens were encouraged to reflect on their actions, to live with integrity, and to honor the gods in both thought and deed. Education, labor, trade, and art were all viewed through this lens. Each act had both a practical and spiritual dimension, linking the mundane to the divine in gentle, constant ways. Imagine a quiet evening in Tenochtitlan. The sun dips behind distant mountains, casting golden reflections across the lake. Families light candles and incense at small altars, whispering prayers and offering flowers. A gentle breeze carries the faint sound of drums and chants from the temple, blending with the soft lapping of water against canal edges. In this serene moment, one senses the intimate presence of the divine, quietly guiding, comforting, and sustaining the lives of the people. Priests and elders served as guides, interpreting signs from the gods, teaching rituals, and ensuring that the delicate balance of the universe was maintained through careful devotion. Their knowledge was both practical and philosophical, encompassing healing, astronomy, agriculture, and ethics. The Mexica understood that spirituality was not confined to sacred buildings or ceremonial events. It was woven into the very fabric of life, touching every thought, word, and action. The Aztec approach to religion illustrates a civilization deeply attuned to the rhythms of the cosmos, the cycles of life, and the responsibilities of humanity. It was a system that combined reverence, observation, and practical wisdom, creating a harmonious flow between heaven and earth, gods and people, individual and community. Spiritual life was both protective and generative, nurturing the body, mind, and soul, while sustaining the larger order of the empire. As night falls, the stars begin to twinkle above the calm waters, reflecting the luminous presence of the gods in the city below. Priests continue their chants, families observe private rituals, and the gentle hum of life carries a sense of continuity, devotion, and balance. In Tenochtitlan, every breath, every step, and every heartbeat is infused with the sacred rhythm of existence, a quiet testament to a civilization that lived in harmony with the cosmos. Chapter 13: The Web of Society, Social Structure and Daily Life in the Aztec Empire. As the gentle light of dawn spills over Tenochtitlan, we step into the intricate tapestry of Aztec society, a world where every individual, family, and community had a defined place in the rhythm of life. The Aztecs organized their civilization with remarkable precision, creating a hierarchy that balanced social responsibility, civic duty, and spiritual devotion. Each class, from noble rulers to common citizens, played a vital role in maintaining the harmony and prosperity of the empire. At the apex of this structure stood the Tlatoani, the emperor or ruler of the Mexica people. He was not only a political leader, but a spiritual figure, the earthly representative of the gods. His presence was a living embodiment of divine authority, and his decisions influenced every aspect of life, from military campaigns and tribute collection to religious ceremonies and urban planning. The Tlatoani was supported by a council of nobles and advisors, individuals selected for their wisdom, loyalty, and experience. Together, they guided the empire with measured deliberation, ensuring that both law and ritual were observed. Beneath the ruler were the Pipiltan, or noble class. These families held positions of influence, overseeing land, trade, and military forces. They lived in large, beautifully constructed houses, often adorned with murals, carvings, and gardens. Education for the Pipiltan was rigorous, encompassing literature, philosophy, religion, astronomy, and governance. They were trained not only to wield power, but to exercise it responsibly, balancing ambition with the well-being of the community. The Macahualtan, or commoners, formed the backbone of Aztec society. Farmers, artisans, and laborers, they cultivated the fertile chinampas, produced goods for daily use and trade, and maintained the infrastructure of the city. Life for the Macahualtan was guided by a rhythm of work, devotion, and community. Families lived in modest homes made of adobe and reeds, often clustered in neighborhoods known as kalpuli, which functioned as social, educational, and civic units. Each kalpuli maintained communal fields, temples, and meeting spaces, reinforcing a sense of collective responsibility and cohesion. Education and training were carefully structured according to social role. Noble children attended the Kalmakak, learning leadership, administration, and spiritual practice, while commoner children attended the Telpachkali, focusing on practical skills, labor, and military training. Yet both groups were imbued with the values of discipline, respect, and service, emphasizing that each citizen, regardless of status, contributed to the stability and harmony of the empire. Slavery also existed in the Aztec world, though it was unlike many modern conceptions. Tlacotan, or slaves, were often individuals who had fallen into debt, committed crimes, or were captured in warfare. Slavery was usually temporary or conditional, and in many cases, slaves could regain freedom through repayment, service, or good behavior. They lived within the social fabric, contributing labor while remaining part of the moral and spiritual framework of society. Daily life in Tenochtitlan was vibrant and organized. Markets thrived with activity, canals carried canoes laden with goods, and streets were alive with the sounds of conversation, laughter, and work. Women played crucial roles in both domestic and economic spheres, managing households, preparing food, weaving textiles, and participating in ritual observances. Their work, though often subtle and behind the scenes, was essential to the continuity and prosperity of the city. The rhythm of the day was intertwined with ritual. Sunrise and sunset marked moments of reflection, prayer, and offerings. Festivals punctuated the calendar, uniting neighborhoods, families, and entire social classes in shared celebration. Music, dance, and poetry provided both entertainment and spiritual expression, fostering emotional cohesion and cultural continuity. Even labor, whether farming, construction, or crafting, was infused with a sense of purpose and connection to the divine. Marriage and family life were central to social organization. Marriages were often arranged with careful consideration of alliances, economic stability, and social responsibility. Children were raised within extended families and taught the values of obedience, skill, and devotion. Elders were respected as repositories of wisdom, guiding younger generations in practical and moral matters. The family unit, while intimate, was also a vital building block of the larger social and civic order. Social mobility, though limited, was possible. Individuals who distinguished themselves in warfare, artistry, or scholarship could rise in status, gaining recognition, privileges, and sometimes noble titles. This system created a dynamic balance, encouraging excellence while maintaining the structured hierarchy that sustained the empire. Consider now a quiet evening in a neighborhood of Tenochtitlan. Smoke rises gently from adobe chimneys as families share meals prepared from fresh maize, beans, and vegetables. Children listen to stories of gods, heroes, and ancestors, absorbing lessons of courage, morality, and devotion. Artisans finish their work, polishing pottery or weaving textiles, while neighbors exchange greetings along narrow streets. The soft glow of lanterns reflects on canals, illuminating a city that is alive yet serene, orderly yet vibrant, a living testament to social harmony and interconnectedness. The Aztec social structure was a delicate balance, combining hierarchy, responsibility, and opportunity. Each class had its role, each individual contributed to collective life, and each day was guided by principles of devotion, discipline, and cooperation. It was a system that allowed the empire to flourish, sustaining its population, economy, and culture, while maintaining a profound sense of order and purpose. Chapter 14: The Warriors of the Sun, Aztec Warfare and Military Life. As the soft morning light stretches over the canals and causeways of Tenochtitlan, we turn our attention to a realm where courage, discipline, and devotion intertwine: the world of Aztec warfare. In the Aztec Empire, military prowess was more than a means of defense or conquest. It was a sacred duty, a way to honor the gods, and a path to personal and social advancement. Every warrior carried not only weapons, but a deep understanding of his role in the cosmic and civic order. The Aztec military was highly organized, a sophisticated system designed to protect the empire and expand its influence. At its heart were the Eagle and Jaguar warriors, elite soldiers who distinguished themselves through bravery, skill, and loyalty. The Eagle warriors, adorned in gilded feathers and motifs of the sun, were renowned for their agility and strategic thinking, often taking the lead in battle. Jaguar warriors, cloaked in feline pelts and symbolic markings, embodied strength, ferocity, and the spiritual ferocity of the jaguar itself. Both orders were celebrated not only for martial skill, but for their devotion to the gods, particularly Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war deity. Military training began in youth, often in the Telpochcali, where boys learned endurance, hand-to-hand combat, and weaponry. Wooden swords edged with obsidian, spears, and shields were used to teach precision and timing, while drills emphasized discipline, coordination, and courage. Education in the art of war was inseparable from spiritual practice. Students learned prayers, chants, and rituals that invoked divine guidance and protection in battle. Physical preparation, mental fortitude, and spiritual alignment were nurtured simultaneously, creating warriors who were both skilled and devout. Tactics and strategy were meticulously developed. Aztec armies moved with precision, using formations and coordinated attacks that leveraged the terrain, climate, and resources of the battlefield. Canals, causeways, and natural landscapes were employed to control enemy movements, while scouts provided vital intelligence. Communication during campaigns relied on runners, signals, and trained observers, ensuring that every movement was deliberate and calculated. Battles were not chaotic clashes, but carefully orchestrated events where skill, courage, and knowledge determined outcomes. Warfare was deeply intertwined with ritual and symbolism. Capturing prisoners, rather than killing indiscriminately, was often the primary objective. These captives could be used for ceremonial sacrifice, a sacred act intended to nourish the gods and maintain cosmic balance. Such practices were carried out with solemn precision, accompanied by chants, offerings, and observances that emphasized the spiritual dimension of conflict. Even in the midst of violence, there was a profound awareness of responsibility, order, and divine purpose. The honor of warriors extended beyond the battlefield. Success in combat brought prestige, recognition, and social mobility. Those who distinguished themselves could rise to the ranks of eagle or jaguar warriors, gain privileges, and even influence political decisions. Medals, feathers, and ceremonial regalia marked achievements, creating a culture where valor, skill, and devotion were celebrated in both public and spiritual life. Consider the rhythm of a campaign. Soldiers prepare at dawn, donning protective gear and weapons polished with care. Families gather to offer prayers, incense, and small gifts, invoking protection and blessing for those who march into danger. Canoes glide silently along canals, carrying warriors to strategic points, while scouts move ahead to observe enemy movements. The air is filled with a quiet tension, punctuated by ritual chants and the soft clatter of armor. Each step, each decision is deliberate, reflecting the fusion of practicality, courage, and reverence that defines Aztec military life. The Mexica also valued the role of diplomacy and alliances in warfare. While combat was central, negotiation, tribute, and strategic partnerships were employed to maintain influence over conquered regions. This balance of force and diplomacy reflected an understanding that long-term stability required both strength and wisdom, both the sword and the mind. Weapons themselves were crafted with remarkable skill and care. Obsidian-edged swords, wooden clubs, spears, and bows were designed for both effectiveness and symbolic significance. Shields bore motifs of animals and celestial symbols, reinforcing the spiritual dimension of combat. Armor, often made of cotton padding or animal hides, was decorated with feathers and pigments, turning each soldier into a living symbol of devotion, courage, and identity. Even outside formal warfare, the warrior ethos permeated daily life. Physical fitness, courage in labor, skill in hunting, and participation in ritual competitions reinforce the values of discipline, resilience, and service. From the calm canals of Tenochtitlan to the bustling marketplaces, the influence of military training and honor could be felt in subtle ways, shaping character and maintaining social cohesion. At dusk, after the march or battle has ended, warriors return to the city. They are greeted by families, neighbors, and priests, their achievements recognized with ceremonial dances, songs, and offerings. The soft glow of lanterns reflects off polished armor and the gentle waters of canals, creating a serene, reflective atmosphere. Stories of courage, strategy, and devotion are recounted, passing lessons and inspiration to the next generation. The Aztec military system was more than a means of survival. It was a spiritual and social institution, integrating discipline, skill, and reverence. Warriors were trained not only in combat, but in ethics, observation, and devotion, embodying the connection between human effort and divine guidance. Through this careful balance, the empire maintained stability, expanded its reach, and cultivated a culture where courage, wisdom, and honor were inseparable. Chapter 15. Rivers of Commerce. Trade, Economy, and Market Life in the Aztec Empire. As the early morning mist gently rises from the canals and lakes surrounding Tenochtitlan, we turn our attention to a different kind of pulse within the city: the rhythm of commerce, exchange, and trade. In the Aztec Empire, economic life was not simply about survival. It was a carefully balanced network that connected farmers, artisans, merchants, and rulers, sustaining both daily life and the larger framework of the empire. Markets were the heartbeat of this system, vibrant centers where goods, knowledge, and culture flowed freely. The Aztecs were masterful organizers of trade. They relied on a combination of local production, regional exchange, and tribute from conquered regions to supply the city's population and sustain the empire's needs. Food, textiles, tools, precious stones, and luxury goods moved along carefully maintained canals, roads, and causeways, forming intricate networks that linked towns and villages to the heart of Tenochtitlan. The exchange of goods was both practical and symbolic, reflecting relationships of power, respect, and interdependence. At the center of economic life were the bustling tianguis, or markets. These open-air spaces were carefully regulated, vibrant arenas of commerce where merchants, known as Pochteca, played a crucial role. Pochteca were more than simple traders. They were specialists in long-distance trade, diplomats, and sometimes even spies, carrying goods and information between regions. Their journeys could span hundreds of kilometers, bringing cacao, textiles, obsidian, jade, feathers, and exotic goods from distant lands into the city. The marketplaces themselves were carefully organized. Stalls were arranged by category, with separate areas for food, cloth, tools, pottery, and luxury items. Merchants displayed goods with meticulous attention to color, texture, and presentation. Shoppers moved along the pathways, exchanging goods, haggling with precision, and observing local customs of trade etiquette. The air was filled with the sense of herbs, cooked maize, roasted cacao, and flowers, creating a sensory experience that was both lively and harmonious. Agriculture was the foundation of the economy. The Mexica mastered the use of chinampas, or floating gardens, which produced abundant harvests of maize, beans, squash, and vegetables. These fertile plots, carefully maintained in the shallow lake waters, ensured a steady supply of food for Tenochtitlan's growing population. Farmers worked diligently, guided by seasonal cycles and celestial calendars, and their produce flowed into markets where it nourished both ordinary citizens and the elite. Artisans contributed another vital layer to the economy. Skilled craftsmen produced pottery, textiles, jewelry, obsidian tools, and ceremonial items. Their work was highly valued, both for practical use and for spiritual significance. Decorative patterns, vibrant colors, and symbolic motifs adorned everyday objects, infusing daily life with beauty and meaning. Artisan guilds provided training, maintained quality standards, and ensured that knowledge was passed to the next generation. Tribute from conquered regions formed a cornerstone of the imperial economy. Towns and provinces under Aztec influence were required to provide goods, labor, or both, supporting the empire's needs while reinforcing social and political hierarchies. Tribute items could include maize, cacao, cotton, precious metals, animal skins, and other valuable resources. This system created a flow of wealth that sustained Tenochtitlan and facilitated large-scale ceremonial projects, monumental architecture, and public works. Trade was not solely transactional. It was deeply embedded in social, political, and spiritual life. The Pochteca often acted as messengers or representatives of the empire, negotiating alliances, gathering intelligence, and maintaining the delicate balance of power between regions. Markets were also social centers, where citizens exchanged news, stories, and ideas, reinforcing community bonds and cultural cohesion. Even religious festivals and ceremonies were intertwined with trade, as goods and offerings flowed through marketplaces to supply temples, altars, and feasts. Imagine a busy morning in the Tlatelolco market, the largest in Tenochtitlan. Canoes glide silently along the canals, carrying baskets of fresh produce and woven goods. Merchants arrange their wares on woven mats and wooden tables, while customers move deliberately through the rows, selecting items with care. The soft clatter of tools, the distant hum of voices, and the gentle murmur of water create a calming symphony, a rhythm that balances energy with order. Children watch with fascination as elders haggle, exchange coins of cacao, and share stories of distant lands. The economy was also deeply connected to values of fairness and justice. Standards and measures were strictly maintained, ensuring that trade was conducted honestly. Weights, scales, and standardized units of cacao beans served as currency, providing a reliable medium of exchange. Disputes were often resolved through mediation, reflecting the Aztecs' understanding that economic harmony was intertwined with social stability. Even in quieter moments, the pulse of commerce continued to sustain life. Farmers tended their fields, artisans shaped clay and wove textiles, and traders prepared for the next day's journey. Markets were places of both work and connection, blending practicality, ritual, and social cohesion. Every transaction, from the exchange of maize to the delivery of luxury goods, contributed to a delicate web of interdependence that supported the empire's prosperity. Through their mastery of trade and organization, the Aztecs created an economy that was resilient, dynamic, and deeply integrated with cultural and spiritual life. Commerce was more than the exchange of goods. It was a flow of energy, knowledge, and social connection, a gentle current that nourished the city, sustained the empire, and connected people across space and time. Chapter 16: Stones and Symbols, Art, Architecture, and City Planning in the Aztec Empire. As the soft glow of dawn spreads across the lake-filled basin of Tenochtitlan, we turn our gaze to the city itself, a marvel of human ingenuity, spiritual devotion, and aesthetic harmony. The Aztecs were not only warriors, farmers, and priests, they were architects, artists, and planners who transformed the natural landscape into a vibrant, ordered, and symbolically rich urban environment. The layout of Tenochtitlan reflected both practicality and cosmic alignment. Canals, causeways, and streets were meticulously designed to facilitate transportation, trade, and communication. The main avenues led to the central ceremonial precinct, dominated by the Templo Mayor, whose twin temples honored Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. Surrounding the temple, plazas and marketplaces were arranged to accommodate gatherings, festivals, and civic life, creating a rhythm of space that balanced function with sacred significance. Water was a central element of the city's design. The Aztecs built chinampas, floating gardens, and intricate canals that supplied water, facilitated travel, and enhanced the city's beauty. Bridges and causeways connected islands, allowing movement and trade while preserving harmony with the natural landscape. The reflection of temples and palaces in calm waters created a dreamlike interplay of light and structure, merging human achievement with nature's serenity. Architecture was both practical and symbolic. Pyramids, temples, palaces, and public buildings were constructed with stone and lime plaster, often adorned with murals, carvings, and symbolic motifs. Staircases, terraces, and platforms elevated sacred spaces, emphasizing the connection between the human and divine. The careful alignment of structures with celestial events, such as solstices and equinoxes, reflected the Aztecs' sophisticated understanding of astronomy and their desire to integrate cosmic rhythms into the city's design. Aztec art was equally intricate and meaningful. Sculptures, reliefs, and carvings depicted gods, animals, celestial symbols, and mythological scenes. Stone monuments, like the famous Sunstone, conveyed cosmic cycles and sacred knowledge, serving both as educational tools and spiritual reminders. Jewelry, pottery, textiles, and featherwork displayed meticulous craftsmanship with vibrant colors, symbolic patterns, and harmonious forms that connected the wearer to spiritual and social identity. Murals and codices further illustrated the Aztec understanding of life, history, and spirituality. Each brushstroke and pigment choice carried meaning, depicting rituals, battles, genealogies, and celestial events. Artists worked with natural dyes, obsidian tools, and feathers, producing works that were visually stunning and symbolically rich. Even everyday objects, such as bowls, combs, and ceremonial attire, were imbued with aesthetic and spiritual significance, creating a world where beauty and meaning permeated every detail. City planning extended beyond the ceremonial and residential zones to include markets, workshops, and agricultural spaces. Neighborhoods, or kalpuli, were self-sufficient, with their own temples, gardens, and communal spaces. Streets were carefully arranged to facilitate trade and social interaction, while open spaces allowed for festivals, performances, and civic gatherings. The design of the city reinforced social order, spiritual awareness, and practical efficiency, creating an environment that nurtured both individual life and collective harmony. Consider walking through Tenochtitlan on a tranquil morning. The soft sounds of water lapping against chinampas, birds calling in the distance, and the gentle footsteps of citizens create a rhythmic backdrop. Palaces and temples rise above the canals, their stone surfaces catching the first light of day. Murals shimmer with color. Carvings depict gods and ancestors, and the streets hum with the calm bustle of daily life. Every element, from the placement of a tree to the orientation of a temple, is deliberate, reflecting thought, care, and reverence. The integration of art, architecture, and urban design demonstrates the Aztecs' understanding that beauty, utility, and spirituality are inseparable. Public spaces were aesthetically pleasing and functionally effective, Private homes were harmonious and practical, and sacred sites were awe-inspiring yet accessible. This balance reflects a civilization attuned to both the physical and metaphysical dimensions of existence, blending human ingenuity with cosmic order. Even in quieter moments, the artistry of the city was evident. Children played along the canals, casting reflections of temple spires into the water. Artisans shaped clay, carved stone, and wove textiles, while elders recounted stories depicted in murals. Music and soft chants drifted from distant plazas, blending with the gentle movement of water and wind, creating a sensory experience that was both calming and profound. Through their mastery of art, architecture, and city planning, the Aztecs created more than a city. They created a living expression of their values, beliefs, and understanding of the universe. Tenochtitlan was a reflection of order, beauty, and devotion, a place where human skill and spiritual purpose intertwined seamlessly, shaping daily life and inspiring awe. Chapter 17: The Meeting of Worlds. Aztec encounters with the Spanish. As the morning mist rises from Lake Texcoco, we step into a pivotal moment in the history of the Aztec Empire, the first encounters with European explorers. These interactions, beginning in the early 16th century, marked the meeting of two worlds that had developed in strikingly different ways, and their consequences would reverberate for generations. In 1519, Hernán Cortés and a small group of Spanish conquistadors arrived on the Gulf Coast of what is now Mexico. News of these strange visitors traveled quickly through the region, reaching the heart of the Aztec Empire in Tenochtitlan. The Mexica, led by Emperor Moctezuma II, observed these newcomers with curiosity, caution, and a complex mix of suspicion and religious interpretation. Some historians suggest that initial responses were influenced by prophecy and mythology, rumors of distant lands, celestial signs, and gods who might return in human form. Early encounters were characterized by both curiosity and misunderstanding. The Spanish, with their unfamiliar language, clothing, and technology, were initially perceived as extraordinary and potentially divine. Horses, armor, and firearms appeared as magical or supernatural forces. For the Aztecs, these signs could not easily be interpreted within the familiar framework of their world, creating both fascination and uncertainty. Moctezuma II sought to understand these newcomers while maintaining caution. He sent emissaries, gifts, and offerings, demonstrating diplomacy, curiosity, and an attempt to integrate the unknown visitors into existing social and ceremonial norms. This initial strategy reflected the Aztec approach to outsiders, one that valued observation, exchange, and careful management of relationships to maintain order and avoid unnecessary conflict. For the Spanish, their goals were driven by exploration, conquest, and the search for wealth, particularly gold. They relied on alliances with indigenous groups who were rivals of the Aztecs, such as the Tlaxcalans. These alliances proved decisive, illustrating the complex social and political landscape of central Mexico. Not all interactions were confrontational. Some were based on negotiation, trade, and strategic partnership, highlighting the nuanced and layered dynamics between the Aztecs and their neighbors. Tensions escalated as cultural misunderstandings compounded. Ritual practices, such as human sacrifice and ceremonial displays, were perceived by the Spanish as shocking and barbaric, while the Aztecs interpreted the Spanish demands, weapons, and religious imperatives as threatening and unpredictable. Miscommunication, differing worldviews, and mutual curiosity created a fragile balance, easily disrupted by fear ambition, and mistrust. When the Spanish entered Tenochtitlan, they were struck by the grandeur, organization, and sophistication of the city. Canals, causeways, marketplaces, temples, and palaces revealed an urban environment unlike anything in Europe, with astonishing population density and social complexity. The Spanish chroniclers often expressed amazement at the scale, planning, and artistry of the city, even as they pursued conquest and control. Despite moments of cautious cooperation, conflict became inevitable. Military engagements, strategic captures, and political manipulation gradually destabilized the Aztec political structure. The smallpox epidemic, introduced inadvertently by the Europeans, further weakened the population, creating profound social and demographic consequences. It is important to approach this timeline with sensitivity, recognizing the catastrophic impact of disease and disruption alongside the agency and resilience of the Aztec people. Through these encounters, we see both sides striving to understand one another within their own frameworks of knowledge and belief. The Aztecs, with centuries of urban planning, political diplomacy, and ritual expertise, engaged thoughtfully with the unknown, even when faced with seemingly impossible challenges. The Spanish, driven by unfamiliar cultural norms and economic ambitions, often misinterpreted or underestimated the sophistication of the society they confronted. Imagine the city of Tenochtitlan at twilight during these tense encounters. The great pyramids and temples stand silhouetted against the sky, while the streets are alive with citizens observing the foreigners, trading goods, or performing rituals. The distant sound of drums, chants, and daily life continues, even as uncertainty lingers in the air. Every interaction carries weight, every gesture is measured, and every decision has consequences that will ripple across generations. The encounter between the Aztecs and the Spanish is a story of complexity, adaptation, and human response to the unknown. It is a reminder that history is rarely simple or one-sided, that understanding requires attention to context, and that cultural encounters can be both fascinating and devastating. The Aztec Empire, with its ingenuity, spirituality, and resilience, faced challenges of unprecedented scale, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire study, reflection, and admiration. Chapter 18: Collapse and Transformation. The Fall of Tenochtitlan, Disease, Politics, and Cultural Survival. As the pale light of dawn filters across the basin where the city once stood, we return to Tenochtitlan, not only as a physical place of stone and water, but as a living community of people, voices, and daily rhythms. To understand its collapse is to listen closely to many overlapping notes. The sudden clash of unfamiliar armies, the invisible spread of disease, the strain of politics and alliances, and the quiet persistence of culture that would refuse to vanish. Imagine Tenochtitlan in its last years as it had been for generations, a dense, humming city of markets, temples, gardens, and causeways. Families rose with the sun, artisans worked at their looms and forges, priests tended altars, and farmers harvested from the chinampas. The city was resilient and resourceful, but it also existed within a fragile web of political relationships and ecological needs. Into this delicate balance came forces that would change everything. First, the arrival of Europeans introduced a new, and for the Mexica, incomprehensible, geopolitical pressure. The Spanish, led by men such as Hernán Cortés, operated by a different logic. They sought wealth, political advantage, and in many cases, religious conversion. They also skillfully formed alliances with indigenous polities that had reasons to oppose Aztec dominance. Many city-states and peoples around the Valley of Mexico had experienced Aztec tribute demands and political pressure for decades. When the Spanish arrived, some of those groups viewed them as an opportunity, uneasy collaborators who might redress local grievances. Those alliances were decisive in the military campaigns that followed. At the same time, political fractures and hard decisions within Tenochtitlan itself shaped events in ways that were sometimes surprising and always human. Moctezuma II, the great ruler, faced a situation he had never been trained to handle. An encounter with strangers whose technology, animals, and intentions did not fit the categories available to Mexica diplomacy and religion. Some leaders counseled accommodation and gifts, others urged fortification and resistance. The weight of centuries of ritual, obligation, and statecraft met the speed and unpredictability of foreign ambition. Choices made in the palace and on the causeways echoed through the city's neighborhoods and fields. Then came the invisible force whose impact was nothing short of catastrophic: disease. For the first time in their history, the peoples of central Mexico encountered old world pathogens to which they had no prior exposure or immunity. Smallpox, a lethal, fast-moving disease, spread with shocking speed, carried along the routes of trade, warfare, and daily life. Its effects were devastating. Entire households, neighborhoods, and even communities lost many members within weeks. The social fabric, the caregivers, the elders, the farmers, frayed as the living struggled to bury the dead, maintain food supplies, and preserve governance. Disease magnified every other problem. When a large portion of the population was sick or dead, the labor needed to tend chinampas, maintain canals, care for children, and rebuild defenses was reduced drastically. Food shortages became a real and growing worry. Sanitation systems and the careful coordination that large urban life depended on broke down in many places. In the midst of hunger and fear, political cohesion weakened, and the ability of leaders to act decisively diminished. Military events, the sieges, the captures, the raids, unfolded against this backdrop of demographic and social collapse. There were decisive confrontations: the uneasy hospitality the Aztecs first extended, the capture and later death of Moctezuma II, the episode known as La Noche Triste, when Spanish forces suffered heavy losses fleeing the city, weighed down by pilfered treasure, and finally, the months-long siege that culminated in 1521 with the fall of the city. The causes of defeat were multiple, not one single factor, but a confluence: superior foreign weaponry and horses, strategic indigenous alliances, the psychological shock of unexpected events, the ravages of epidemic disease, and the gradual erosion of the organizational strength that a complex urban society required. Yet to call this moment only a collapse would be to miss the full arc of the story. Collapse in the political sense did not mean the end of human presence, identity, or creativity in the valley. Rather, the fall of Tenochtitlan initiated a deep transformation. Life continued, but it did so under profoundly altered conditions. New political structures were imposed. Colonial institutions replaced much of the old civic framework. Christianity was introduced and transformed through local practices. However, beneath and alongside these changes, continuities persisted. Language, memory, craft, ritual fragments, agricultural techniques, and ways of thinking about the world continued to survive and adapt. Cultural survival is visible in many subtle ways. The Nahuatl language endured and remained a medium for poetry, legal negotiations, daily commerce, and religious syncretism. Indigenous artisans continued to weave, carve, and paint, often integrating new materials and motifs, but preserving techniques learned across generations. Oral histories and stories continued to be told, not erased by conquest, but carried forward in new contexts, sometimes recorded in early colonial documents, sometimes preserved privately in households. Rituals transformed, with some aspects adapting to Christian calendars and saints, and other elements preserved in local feasts, dances, and offerings. Archaeological and documentary traces help us see both loss and persistence. Excavations in the old ceremonial precinct reveal layers of construction, destruction, and rebuilding. The bases of temples, offerings laid down in sacred contexts, and the urban frameworks that supported large communities. Spanish chronicles and indigenous codices, each with their own perspectives and biases, offer narratives that can be read carefully to recover voices of the time. Skeletal analyses reveal the human toll of disease and conflict, while artifacts show the continuity of craft traditions and the introduction of new materials. All these pieces, when assembled with care, point to a scene of transformation rather than simply disappearance. Cultural survival also took the form of resilience and reconfiguration. Communities adopted, refashioned, and refocused traditions, combining old cosmologies with new religious forms, reinterpreting sacred places within colonial frameworks, and continuing agricultural practices like Chinampa cultivation, even when the social and political scaffolding had changed. Over generations, these adaptations helped form the cultural foundations of modern Mexico. The blend of indigenous and European elements that shape art, language, food, festivals, and identity. There is also a quieter legacy worth noting. The everyday knowledge of living with the lake, hydrology, Chinampa agriculture, water management, did not vanish overnight. Skills and practical wisdom persisted in family lines and neighborhood communities. Even when large political institutions were dismantled, the lived expertise of people who farmed, fished, built, and taught their children continued. That continuity is a form of cultural survival that roots deeply in the landscape. As we finish this reflection, imagine the old city again, not as a ruin alone, but as a place where the voices of those who lived there continued in new tongues and forms. The fall of Tenochtitlan was a tragedy with profound human cost. Lives cut short, institutions reworked, and cultural treasures dislocated. Yet it was also a transformation from which new communities, languages, and identities would emerge, carrying forward elements of the Mexica legacy into the centuries to come. In remembering collapse and transformation together, we practice a gentleness of understanding. We acknowledge the sorrow and loss with compassion. We honor the resilience and creativity of survivors, and we trace the threads that link the past to the present. The story of Tenochtitlan's fall is not merely an ending. It is a complex passage through which people adapted, preserved what they could, and shaped a new world from the fractured pieces of an old one.